Hey folks, this is Rhykker with your ultimate guide to Diablo 4 Season 8. If you got any questions about Season 8, what's the fastest way to level now, what's the season theme, how to farm up the season theme powers, this video should answer all your questions. I'm recording this on day 2 of the season. I'm at Paragon 151. I've pretty much maxed out the boss powers that I'm using. I'm currently comfortably in T3. I could probably push T4 if I wanted to. And I am not a pro player. I was just able to put a lot of time into it. The real pros have blasted even further. But the fact that I can get here means you can also get here when you're able to put in as many hours as I've put in. Now, Season 8 is Belial's return, and the season theme is all about boss powers. You're going to farm up different boss powers, and you're basically stealing the powers that you see bosses wield. So, for instance, Grigwar shoots down his lightning. Well, now I am Grigwar shooting down the lightning. As far as seasonal powers go, these are the coolest ones yet. Now, your first question might be, what class do I play? I have a separate video for that. Do be sure to check that one out. And subscribe to stay tuned for when new videos go live, because I am planning on making a top 10 builds video once the meta settles and we kind of test out more builds. Now, another important question to answer before anything else, you do not need to purchase Vessel of Hatred to play Season 8. That said, some of the powers are locked behind the expansion. Pretty much every boss in the game has an associated power, so if you cannot fight that boss because they're locked behind the expansion, and there's a couple of them, then you will not be able to get their power. Now, before we dive into anything else, the first thing you'll want to do is, in your options, and you got to do this from character select, not in-game, you're going to go to connect at the top and enable cross-network play. This allows you to play with a pool of players across every platform. Why do you want to do this? So that you ensure that when you're engaged in the seasonal activity, there's going to be plenty of other people there to help you get these things done more quickly and efficiently. More on that in a bit. Now, the very first thing that you're going to do when you load into game is you're going to bring up your inventory, you're going to bring up your wardrobe, and you are going to equip a pet. A pet is going to go automatically pick up stuff from you. It is a fantastic quality of life. Now, if you do skip the campaign, the next thing you'll want to do is complete a little quest over here. There's going to be a fellow to talk to here. He's going to give you a quest. You accept it, then you walk over here. You're going to bring up your emote wheel, and you're going to cheer. That is going to complete the quest. You go here, you're going to turn it in, and he's going to give you a little gift bag from which you'll get some resources that you will eventually be able to use as starter resources for upgrading your potions and crafting elixirs. The next tip is throughout your entire leveling process, and pretty much anytime you're playing the game, you always want to be under the effects of an elixir. You'll be able to, starting at level 10, craft at the Alchemist elixirs. It doesn't matter which, you're just doing it for that XP bonus. The basic elixirs give 5% XP, and then more advanced ones eventually give 8%. At much higher level, you'll be able to craft incense as well for an additional 5% XP buff, but first and foremost, elixirs always have an elixir running. Now, the second thing you're going to want to do is, if you are playing with Vessel of Hatred, go to the den and equip 1 or 2 mercenaries. 2 if you're playing solo, 1 if you are not. Now, even if the mercenary isn't a huge source of power, you want to be unlocking your bartering here. So every mercenary has multiple unlock tracks, and some of these increase your bartering. This bartering is a good way of getting some early game stuff to help flesh out your missing aspects or otherwise missing resources. Every day you get 1 free restock, and you should make use of it. See what is available. Sometimes you can get something good. Now let's talk about fast leveling. People are always asking, what's the fastest way to level in the new season? The absolute fastest way is going to be leveling via the campaign. So at character select, you are not going to skip Vessel of Hatred campaign. You're going to play through the Vessel of Hatred campaign on normal. The quest completion XP is huge, but that won't get you all the way to 60. After that, you'll have to rely on something else. That said, I don't recommend that way. If you enjoy doing that, sure, it's technically the fastest, but you're kind of not really playing the game. So here's what my party did. Start the game on normal, skip campaign, and then right away go do the seasonal Questline, which generally starts off, I believe, in Tarsarak, which I think is right over here. But you're going to just look on your map for whatever the seasonal questline is. It's that little green flag. Go to it. That's going to get you started and introduced with Incursions. Now, the reason we're playing on normal and not hard is because we have to fight bosses, and bosses early game on hard are going to take a long time, and they're not worth the time versus reward. So follow that quest line. You're going to start getting some boss powers by doing these incursions. You're also going to have a reputation board here that you can always come back to. Do be sure to come and turn that in whenever you have rewards available. Ultimately, all the way along the track, there's going to be a mythic at the end, or rather a resplendent spark to craft your own mythic. But along the way, you're getting useful materials with intermittent quest lines that you have to go and progress, with this being the final quest. You do want to at least go through to get the final quest done. And again, these will get you to do what are called Apparition Incursions. So that is the seasonal event. Sometimes these incursions are also bounties. So this is the little symbol you're looking for here. And they tend to spawn in the same couple of areas. There's like one around here. There's one around here. There's one that tends to spawn over there. You'll start to become familiar with them. So the Apparition Incursion, you're going to head over to it, and it's a multi-phase event. And the first phase, assuming you're there right when it starts, or maybe if you get there a little bit early, you're going to have 5 minutes to fill a bar. We got here 14 seconds ahead of time. So there's going to be these green symbols here, and eventually, again, as we said, monsters are going to start spawning, and you're going to have 5 minutes for you and everyone in this zone. It's 4 minutes, in fact. And you see this right here is a betraying eye. You click on that, click on the betraying eye, and that's going to spawn more monsters. Part of your seasonal quest line will be to click on these betraying eyes. So just to know, that's what they are, and they pop up on the map. They're these diamonds here. The white diamonds are more betraying eyes that you can find. The betraying eyes spawn monsters. Your goal is to kill all the red monsters on your minimap, or as many as possible. These are the ones that fill your bar. You want to, again, fill that bar. We're clicking another eye here. Fill that bar before the time runs out, obviously. If you do not, you fail the event and Belial escapes. Now I'm playing, this is like 3 o'clock in the morning, so there's not a whole lot of people playing. Typically you'd find, again, a lot more people in these events helping you out. Everyone's contribution works here. Click more eyes, spawn more monsters, and once you've completed that, you're going to fight your first boss. There's a pool of bosses that are random, and these are the lesser bosses that will unlock the lesser powers for you. They're also dropping, sometimes, a little leaf symbol there. That is Ash. That is a resource you're going to use to level up your boss powers. So we're coming back here because once this is filled, at this summoning triangle, can't say circle I suppose, we're going to get our boss to spawn. We'll pop one final eye here, and now we got about 20 seconds before the first spawn. This is going to be the first of 2 spawns before we get to fight Belial himself. So this is not actually Belial, this is just a shade of him that summons more dudes, but in a couple seconds we'll have the boss randomly selected. Here we go, we got Blackmailer. So we defeat him, and if it's your first time, the first time you defeat any boss, you're going to unlock the boss power. So we just beat him. Now we move on to phase 2. Belial moves to a new location. So you can literally follow him if you want. It doesn't really matter. You just want to kill more of the red dots on your screen. He's just moving to where the next summoning triangle is going to be. And you repeat this same process now. You're going to fight your second lesser boss, and then you'll get your Belial fight. So here we got our second boss. He's down, and this should... Oh, he's not down yet, actually. He's a slippery sucker. Kerma the Frog is the boss to fight here. My build is Blood Surge, for anyone wondering, which is not a good single target build, but excellent for clearing groups of enemies. All right, Belial will soon emerge now. So this is Baby Belial. There's a Baby Belial and a Giga Belial. So this is the Baby Belial fight, and this will mark the end of the Apparition Incursion. So with Belial ultimately defeated, you will then move on to doing other incursions. So you're going to do a few of those until you finish farming up a couple of the boss powers that you may want. You don't have to go unlock all of them, and you don't have to keep slamming incursions. You could if you want to, but it's not going to be efficient. You really just want to start by doing a few to get some boss powers running, because they do help and they are a jump in power. Also, whenever a world boss spawns, you're going to want to go do that. Again, could be on normal difficulty, because the world boss powers are some of the best early game starter powers. So the blue powers, these are the ones that you farm from the incursions themselves. Now, if there's one that you're fishing for, you can get unlucky like I did, and it can take forever to get one. You're just at the mercy of whatever boss randomly spawns. But then the orange tier powers, they are a marked increase in power. Now, 3 of them are world boss powers, and the others are from Lair bosses, which you're only going to be able to access in Torment 1 and above, and the same thing with these red powers, only in Torment 1 and above. So for early game, you're just unlocking the blues and 3 of the oranges, 1 for each world boss. Again, if you can get that world boss power, generally going to be pretty good for you. So for instance, if you are a channeling build, well, the Wandering Death's chest beam is really good. While channeling a skill, you spawn that big old beam. If your build that happens to use barriers a lot, Blackmailer's Sabotage is pretty good. Casting a core skill while you have a barrier knocks down close enemies. This helps a lot with survivability. Now, one of the best ones is Ashava's Poison Breath. If you can find any way to deal a damage over time effect with your build, Ashava's is huge damage for early game. Hitting an enemy with a dot spawns a wave of acid that's going to deal a bunch of damage. Now again, you have to defeat the Ashava world boss, so you're at the mercy of elements outside of your control. You can always go to helltides.com, it'll tell you when the next world boss is coming up and what world boss it is. Alex Talons is not bad. Casting a basic skill applies a bunch of damage to enemies it hits. If you're a build that has a high attack speed, hitting with basic skills a lot, this can be pretty good. Now, if you're a poison-based build, Skurg's Toxins could be interesting. When an enemy deals direct damage to you, apply poisoning damage to them over 4 seconds. Spiritborn in particular has a lot of synergies with poison and poisoning to ramp this up even more. Now, what you'll notice about the boss powers is that you select 1 primary one and then 3 secondary ones. Each of these boss powers has a primary effect when you use it as your primary, and it has a modifier effect if you put it in one of these 3 slots over here. So which ones you'll want to put in the 3 minor slots kind of depends on what your build is. You don't have to fuss too much about it in the early game. Again, don't farm up all the powers if you don't want to. It's going to slow down your leveling speed. You also don't have to focus too much on leveling these up during your 1 to 60 leveling journey. If you want to, you can hold off, save your Spectral Ash, and only level up, or really invest in leveling up the ones that you're going to want to use in the end game. Do note that the blue powers cost the least to level up, and the red powers cost the most. And there are breakpoints that you hit where the cost to level each of these things goes up and up and up. So it's pretty cheap to level the blue ones, maybe up to about 8. Beyond that, it does start to get pricey. So you started on normal, you've started your seasonal quest line, you farmed up a couple of powers. What do you do next to level up as quickly and efficiently as possible? Well, if by this time you have found Tributes of Growth, this is an expansion-only feature. Tributes of Growth earn experience at Attunement Rank 1 in the Undercity. If you have these are worth doing. That's going to be in Kurast. You're going to feed it in. You're going to do your Undercity run. Don't just blitz it through. You do want to clear enemies because these dungeons have high density of enemies in them. You're going to find this again right down here, and you're going to have the option, once you insert the tribute, to juice it further. You can juice it if you want. You don't really have to, but if you should be able to afford it at least. It's not that costly. Low level, getting more weapons can be pretty useful. Now, the way you run the Undercity, you're going to want to get the max rewards. You don't have to go literally explore every nook and cranny, but a generally good run is going to pick out a path that hits all the important things without too much backtracking. So when you load in, look at the map and kind of plan how you're going to go through it. At that point, you want to make sure you hit the beacons, and as long as you kind of hit everything, you ought to be able to max out your attunement, which is this bar on the right. Now in my case here, we're going to take a little bit of a circuitous route. You'll notice that monsters are showing up as orange dots. That's because I'm playing solo and I have Subo as my main mercenary. Subo will do that. If you're playing in a group or you don't have Subo as your main, you will not see those orange dots. Something I see people often do is they click the beacon, they kill some of the monsters, and then they leave before killing them all. If you do that, you don't get the completion. You see they spawn as red dots. You want to kill every red dot monster. That makes those white orbs drop, and those feed you a bunch of completion. Now, these skull monsters on your minimap, those are going to extend your timer. They're also worth doing it if you don't need the time, just because they're good completion. But it is the torch-looking things that give you big chunks of completion on your bar. At the end of the Undercity, you fight a boss, and then you get a reward chest, which is actually a pretty good source of drops. Now again, I would only run the Undercity if you specifically have those growth tributes. Otherwise, you would move on to the next activity that we'll mention here as soon as we finish this boss to show the reward chest. All those little golden orbs, that's additional XP that you can get. But the next activity that you would move on to is going to be efficient Helltides. So, Helltides with Whispers. Every Helltide that spawns is going to have Whispers to complete, so you're going to go into the Helltide and you're going to try to do all the Whispers therein. Now, the Helltide bounties that you'll want to do are all the ones that synergize with you actually participating in the Helltide. So, Blood Maiden. Again, ideally, someone else is going to spawn the Blood Maiden for you. You can fight them. This is a big open world zone. There ought to be many other people there. And you don't have to put in a heart. All you need to do is slay the Blood Maiden to get 5 Grim Favors. That's half of your Whisper bar right there. Otherwise, slay skeletons. You're doing that anyway. Slay demons, you're doing that anyway. Harbingers will spawn under specific circumstances, you're doing that anyway. What you don't want to do is go off and do a dungeon in the midst of your Helltide. Collecting cinders, you're doing that naturally. Venomous motes, all these things. And do make sure you go turn in your Grim Favors at the Tree of Whispers whenever you can, because that is some good juicy XP and additional drops. Now, one thing to bear in mind about the Blood Maiden is most of the monsters that spawn don't actually give XP. So don't just sit there and farm Blood Maiden endlessly. She is not like in Season 2. She does not even give that many drops. She's good to do, but she's not good to endlessly, repeatedly farm. Every Helltide will always have a Whisper to do the Blood Maiden, and you always want to do it for those 5 juicy Whispers. So if you start a campaign's not going to get you all the way to 60. Depending on what level you are, you might need to then do those tributes or the Helltide. But once you're at least level 45, between levels 45 and 50, then you want to go knock out your Strongholds. Strongholds you do on normal difficulty. Completing a Stronghold gives you a ton of XP, and it doesn't scale with difficulty, so you do it on normal to do it as fast as possible. Do not do the Nahantu Strongholds. Those take way too long, but do all the other Strongholds. And if you started them at 45, you won't make it quite all the way to 60. You'll make it to about 58 maybe. So if you start closer to 50, it might get you all the way to 60. But even if you get to only 58, then when you gotta resume leveling, again, go back to doing what we just said. Either, priority 1, your Tributes of Growth. Priority 2, Helltide. If you really want to, you can, do some more incursions. They're less efficient for leveling, but they're not terribly inefficient. And at least you are going to be building up your boss powers and farming up your Spectral Ash to level up your boss powers. Now, while doing Undercity or Helltide, you can bump the difficulty up to hard. And if you reach a point where you feel you have a really good build together, you can even try bumping the difficulty further. Only increase the difficulty if doing so does not decrease your time efficiency. You never want to feel like you're struggling. So if you are overkilling things on your current difficulty, you can try bumping up the difficulty and see if you're still killing things pretty fast, then you can be comfortable there. But that's again only when you are farming monster XP. When you're doing quests, i.e. Strongholds or campaign, you do it on normal because the completion XP does not scale. Once you have reached level 60, at that point, you can start taking on the tormented bosses. But you will first want to unlock Torment 1, you're going to do that at the pit in Karagar. Now, the bosses have been juiced up, alright? The Lair bosses are now more challenging than ever before, but they are now summoned in an entirely different manner. You no longer need materials to summon the bosses. You only need materials to open their reward chest. But before you get to that, you are going to first, again, unlock Torment 1 by doing a tier 10 pit. Once you can handle that, and you can unlock Torment 1, you move into Torment 1 difficulty, and then you're going to want to bang out whatever powers you might need of the Lair bosses. Now, one thing to be aware of is that Spectral Ash, i.e. this resource that you use to level up your boss powers, you're going to get a considerable amount of that from defeating these Lair bosses and opening their chests. So in endgame, the deeper into the game you go, more and more of your Spectral Ash will come from Lair bosses as opposed to farming the incursions. You could farm incursions, but in my opinion, it is more effective and more efficient to farm the Lair bosses. I would still do, however, an incursion when it spawns as a bounty. You can find the Lair bosses on your map. So one of them is in the Darkened Way. That is Lord Zier, Ancient Seat. You can port straight to that. You've got the Beast in Ice and the Glacial Fissure over here. Sometimes these will also spawn as bounties. Definitely want to do them in that case. Grigwar over here. Hangman's Hall, that's Andariel. You got Belial, the new one here. You won't see Belial at first until you complete the quest line to see him. But that's also where you're going to fight Uber Belial or Giga Belial. In any case, you can go try to fight these bosses at any time. Unless you're playing hardcore, there's no harm in trying, because it costs you no resources to fight the boss. It is only once you defeat the boss, there's going to be a chest. It'll cost you resources to open that chest. So all of these boss resources, they all have tooltips. It tells you everything you need to know. Where you can find them, what these are used for, right? It requires 10 of these to open the chest. So the costs have risen. We're going to be doing far fewer bosses, but every boss will be more impactful because their drops have been juiced. In order to unlock the boss power, all you need to do is defeat the boss. You don't have to open the reward chest. So if you want one of their powers, just go fight them as soon as you can handle them. What happens if you can't handle them yet? Well, you got to power up. How do you power up once you're level 60? Well, the season journey is actually really useful this season. So just go through the steps, you're going to get a bunch of rewards, and it's going to guide you through activities that will be helpful and useful to powering up your character. And they generally don't take you that far out of your way. Another reason you definitely want to be doing your season journey is that they have moved Smoldering Ashes into the season journey. So this is power that you're going to be unlocking fairly early on here. And once it's unlocked, you're going to see it appear down here in your season's blessings. I want to boost through my reputation track faster, so I used the Urn of Oaths over here. When I was doing my pit levels and I was improving my glyphs, I wanted to get that extra chance at upgrading the glyphs even easier. And ancestral caches of the Tree of Whispers are so good. I want to up my chance of getting those. Now, if you're planning to do a few Nightmare Dungeon runs or Infernal Hordes runs, you can reallocate your stuff, juice the Urn of Masterworking. If you are planning to do Lair bosses, you can juice your Urn of Lies to increase the chances of Belial spawning. Because the Lair bosses, we have a fancy graphic that I'm going to add now in post-processing. And this fancy graphic here, this shows the flow of bosses from one to another. So you have your starter bosses. These you're going to get keys from just by playing the game. A good source of these keys, Apparition Incursions, the end chest, at least the Belial is going to drop them. Helltide chests can also drop it. World bosses can drop them. And actually, Legion events. If you're really strapped for resources, for boss summoning materials, and a Legion event is about to spawn, you can go do that, bang it out real quick, and get some summoning materials. There's a lot of ways to get these summoning mats. All of these tier 1 Lair bosses will then drop, as part of their loot table, in their chest, will then drop keys for the tier 2 bosses. Now, sometimes you will get, instead of a key, a Stygian stone. This is a skeleton key. It can be used in place of any tier 2 boss key. So we're talking about the Duriel keys, the Andariel keys, as well as now a new Uber boss is going to be the Mephisto Wolf, only if you have Vessel of Hatred. But basically, once you are at that boss, let's say you're at Duriel, you defeat Duriel, you go to the Duriel chest, you can just right-click on your Stygian stone and it's going to auto-convert into the appropriate key for whatever boss you're at. Now, how do you get the Giga Belial key, the Betrayer's Husk? Whenever you have defeated and opened a chest of any other Lair boss, whatever tier, there is a chance that a baby Belial will spawn. And if you defeat that baby Belial, then you are going to get a Betrayer's Husk, which is a key to open the Giga Belial chest. Giga Belial's fight, again, can be found in the Palace of the Deceiver, right there. Giga Belial is the pinnacle boss of Season 8. He has the best chance at getting mythics, the best drops, the most juiced drops, and actually when you defeat him, you'll have your choice of what reward chest to select, as he can mimic the drop table of any other boss. And for those who have played Diablo 3, this will look quite familiar, won't it? Now, if ever you're wondering where to get any of these boss powers because you're confused, you mouse over it and it will tell you. Defeat Belial Lair boss in Torment to unlock to get Belial's I-Beam, for instance. Belial is the only boss with 2 powers. He's got a red power and he's got a orange power. This one is Defeat Belial Lair boss Ambush in Torment to unlock. So this one, you're kind of at the mercy of randomness, of him spawning in those tormented fights. So let's summarize a couple things. Fastest leveling is going to be Campaign. Otherwise, Tributes of Growth Undercity, Infernal Hordes. Towards the end, you're going to do the Strongholds. Seasonal Power Summary. You unlock boss powers by the first time you complete a boss. Deterministically, you unlock its power. For all the blue ones, you're at the mercy of doing the incursion events, and whatever random boss spawns, you can get unlucky and not get the right one to spawn for quite a while. All the others are pretty deterministic. World boss spawns. Go do the Lair bosses without even needing the key, so you can do it on Torment 1. Don't need a key to do it. Spectral Ash to level up these powers is going to be via incursion events early game, but later you're going to get them from the chests from using these keys. Endgame Lair boss gameplay loop is going to be taken on the Tier 1 bosses that'll drop the keys for the Tier 2 bosses, and throughout all of these fights, maybe a Belial appears who's going to drop the Betrayer's Husk for the Giga Belial fight. And that should wrap up this guide, folks. But do sound off in the comments with your tips for Season 8. And stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters for making these videos possible. If you're new to this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more Diablo content.